Welcome to NovoEDTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the NovoEDTalks podcast, a place for training trailblazers to get real. I'm Lynn Christensen-Esker of NovoEd, and today I'm joined by Jennifer Sutherland, Global Leader of Culture, Learning, and Development at Trustwave, cybersecurity company that provides managed detection and response, managed security services, database security, and email security to organizations around the globe. Jennifer, welcome to NovoEDTalks.
Hi, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Well, let's start off a little bit with your background and your role at Trustwave.
Yeah, I've definitely had a few different roles at different industries. I started my career in sales. So I was in sales for about 10 years, and then I moved into training just because it really sort of spoke to me. But I've worked at a variety of different companies, and so I really like to sort of jump in and learn a new industry. So this will be almost 3 years that I've been in cybersecurity. But my role is interesting. It sort of has expanded. I started being global learning and development. We are a truly global organization. We have about 200 or so people in North America, and then we have another 200 or so in Poland, 250 in Philippines, 200 or so in Australia, and then others sort of around the world. But it's been a really interesting experience. My first truly global role, where I'm supporting a truly global organization. But now I lead employee engagement and culture and DE&I, sales enablement, and so it sort of continues to expand, which is really exciting, and really have an impact on the overall employee experience. So I do a little bit of everything, I think, over there.
That's always a lot of fun. So tell me about who your learners are.
So we do corporate training. So we'll do for the support teams, like the internal teams like finance and marketing and such. But the organization primarily are these cybersecurity experts. They are professionals. They are very, very, very smart individuals that do really cool things like go into the dark web and find out what's happening with threat actors who are trying to do things like get details in foreign governments. And so they are going into all these different systems to find little breadcrumbs to try to figure out who these bad actors are, these threat actors, and to identify them, identify their behaviors, and help companies, organizations, businesses, governments sort of fight and combat that in a proactive as well as a reactive way. So the learners are really some of the smartest people I could ever talk to, and know way more than me about the technical side of things. So what I really do is try to enable them from a training perspective related to technology. I'm not going to teach them how to do the stuff, but I find ways to enable them to do that. And then there's soft skills, onboarding, compliance training, leadership development, those kind of things. And that sort of goes across the board, across the organization.
What would you say are your biggest challenges as an L&D professional in cybersecurity?
I would say one, because I'm in cybersecurity, things like AI are going to take longer for us to implement because we really want to make sure that there's no potential threat, what the vulnerability and the risk is. So it's not like the newest, latest, and greatest. I can't just go, I want to play with that. I have to make sure it's vetted and really we understand how that's going to be a part of our organization and our sort of security investment overall. So that's one thing. And then I would say specifically around cybersecurity is because it's very highly technical in nature and it is changing constantly. So we have a great partnership with Microsoft. Microsoft releases a new program, and now we need to make sure that all of our team is really skilled up on that. And so it is about having external partnerships with organizations that can help me make sure our team gets skilled up when they need it, so that we can then support our organizations, because they already have the technology. We just need to make sure that we know how to support it. So it's an interesting sort of mix to be ahead of the game. And I'd say one of my favorite things around that line is really balancing soft skills around technology. And I recently talked about VUCA in an article related to technology and technical skills, and how that element of like the human, the changes and the vulnerabilities and things like that around technology, that has to be a balance. It can't just be technical skills, right? So we have to think about the human element to that. And that just adds a little bit of a complexity, but challenge and sort of excitement around the whole thing.
Yeah, I'll bet. So you're talking about, you're in technology, but how do you, as an L&D leader, utilize technology? I mean, what are the challenges that you face there?
I would say I like to keep a pretty minimal stack from a technology perspective. We are a small team of 2 in my L&D team. So we are both practitioners. I lead the team, so I do the strategy and all of that, but I'm also a practitioner. So I don't want us to have 12,000 different things that we can like reach out to. But there are a few things that I have found have been very helpful for us. One, I like to have a way to do sort of that quick, engaging, I'd call it like a hype video, like interactive sort of way to get people excited, like the short 30, 60, 90 second that I can create fairly quickly with themes and backgrounds and all of that. A lot of templates. So that's one of the technologies that I really like to use. The other thing is we do use surveys a lot. So we do the internal surveys to find out what's going on with the employees, how they feel about events, the employee engagement survey I lead. So that's definitely a technology. And then we like to have that engagement during training. So we use Microsoft Teams as our delivery mechanism for virtual training. But I like to add some elements to that of, polls and activities and questions and little gamify kind of elements within that. And then we have our learning management system that we utilize. So we're pretty minimal. We actually don't even have, we have Captivate, but other than that, we really don't use too much instructional design software. Most of the stuff that we use is going to be sort of those elements that we add before and after identified training that we utilize already.
Well, listeners may hear a little bit of background noise, or a lot of background noise right now. We are at ATD in New Orleans, Louisiana, here May 2024. And so, Jennifer, I wanted to ask you about your experience so far. I know we only just started, but can you tell us a little bit about what you've been seeing and hearing in the sessions you've attended so far?
Yes, absolutely. So if you have not attended ATD conference, there's about 8,000 of our peers here, and that is very exciting. So it is a lot of fun. There's a ton of people here. The excitement and engagement is really exciting for me. I'll tell you, one of the things I love about ATD is I've been in training and development for 20 years. And this is the one organization that I can go to talk to peers about my day-to-day life at work that understand it. I can talk to friends and family and my boyfriend, and they get it. But other L&D professionals get it. Like, if I can talk about a challenge we're specifically having, or, why did we have this issue, or, now we're talking about ROI and business outcomes and just the terminology that we use, there's nothing like being connected to your own peers around that same stuff. So ATD is your chance to do that with 8,000 of your closest friends. And so right now I'm sort of looking at the agenda. We are starting day 1, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There are, I think, 30 sessions or so, 15 to 30 sessions per block. So I'm trying to figure out where to spend my time. But so far, we had an amazing kickoff. We actually met with, his name is X. He's got a whole name, but he goes by X. And he is based here in New Orleans, and he's got this organization called Dear World. And it's really cool talking about telling your own personal story, but how to come across your story, and like what it's another way of looking at like your mission statement or what's important to you, your personal brand. And that was really fascinating this morning. And we have somebody who's like our MC. She's sort of curating the sessions for us. And her session, she sort of kicked us off today, but then she had to opportunity to interview Matthew McConaughey. Yes. All right, Matthew McConaughey. And he was very inspiring this morning. I wrote a whole bunch of notes, a lot of like really key, like he has powerful things that he says, like phrases that just stick. They are just really strong. So, but we really talked about things like, sort of being a part of your purpose and understanding what's important to you and recognizing that some things you just kind of have to let go, and how do you put your ego aside when you're all moving on the same path. And a lot of it was based on his book Greenlight, so he did kind of pull some of the notes from there, which was great. So far the energy has been fantastic, and they ended this morning session with a second line sort of procession. I don't know if people are familiar with New Orleans, look up second line. But the second line procession, there was a band that performed, and we were doing When the Saints Go Marching In. And so we could like follow them out of the great first session, out of the great hall. So it has already been like high energy, super exciting, and 300 exhibitors and vendors here in the expo hall to visit, including, of course, NovoEd.
Yep, we're here for sure. We're here in our meeting room inside our exhibit. So I'm so glad that you came to visit us. It sounds really energizing. I know that when I get out and start talking to people, it's the best thing. And I mean, you're very right about the idea that people don't really understand unless you're with your peers. And this is such a great opportunity. What do you look for in, what opportunities are you looking for when you're in a crowd like this?
Yeah, it's funny because I have worked in companies where I have been led a team of, I had 180 people within my span of control in a training organization. 180, that's huge, right? So I've led like really, really large teams. Currently, I'm leading a team of 2. So I'd like to find other people that can supplement sort of my experience and I can learn from. So, I'm really getting a lot out of talking to people who are running their own business, or that they are a vendor, or like an e-learning provider, or they have some sort of software or something that's new, or they have a way to engage an audience differently. I'm loving one of my favorite topics over the past like year or two is talking about brain science and understanding how people learn. Lauren Waldman is here. She's the learning pirate, and she has so much knowledge about truly how the brain works and how we as L&D professionals can use that information to make sure that people are learning in the way people learn. And it's, debunking some of those myths. So I love meeting new people that are going to like add those supplemental elements to what I'm going to learn, and kind of challenge me and go, oh, I never thought of that. I never learned that, or I haven't had experience with that yet. So that's really some of the things I look for, is trying to find people that can kind of build my network that way and build my own knowledge, and maybe I can share a little bit with them as well.
I'd love to hear more about that, actually. So how do you apply brain science to what you do day to day in learning and development? I mean, specifically.
Yeah. So one of the key things that she talks about, she talks about how, there's quite a few people actually here at the conference in various ways talking about neuroscience and brain science and learning and, truly understanding that. But a couple of things is, we've heard of adult learning theory, or andragogy, which is the difference of how adults learn versus how children learn. But what this neuroscience really kind of takes it to the next level. So a couple of things. One, it 100% debunks the concept of a learning style. When I first started in L&D, we talked about, okay, are you a kinesthetic learner, an auditory learner, a visual learner? That's sort of been debunked. Yes, there's certain things that it might apply to. Like, I can't learn to drive a car by reading a novel, right? That's not going to work. But there's certain, like that, besides the certain elements, it's a little bit of everything. It's a hybrid. So the brain science talks about that. One of the things that I know Lauren has talked about, she did a LinkedIn post about it, talking about sometimes throwing in an intentional error in a presentation triggers the brain to sort of stop and like think a little differently. And then you can use that as like a callback point to say, remember how that felt and what you did. And those are the little things that like we can learn and add to our own training development to help people sort of get those concepts. The brain science also talks about like, now I love this. It's a lot more about that micro learning, that like repeatable knowledge, and not expecting people to sit there for 4 hours and then walk away and be able to go repeat it. It has to be sort of like small incremental repeatable knowledge. And that's just something that we didn't do when we sat in a classroom for 8 hours in school. You just sat there and you took in knowledge, but you didn't really have a chance to apply it or, kind of share it back and learn from it. The other key thing is reflection, taking time to reflect on what you've learned incrementally. I've attended quite a few sales kickoffs with different sales teams. And I think it's really important, like when you attend something for a couple of days and you invest in that you are going to make sure people take time to say, okay, what did I learn? What happened in this session? What's new about this product? What's new about our process? What new system do we have or whatever? And being able to just write it down and reflect it, that intentionality of writing it down, reflecting on it, creating your own action plan is absolutely invaluable. And a lot of it is based on all of this new knowledge that's coming out around brain science, which I think is super exciting.
I wanted to go back to what you were talking about sort of that micro learning. E-learning is sort of an outdated kind of, but that's really what we're talking about,
Yep.
Isn't it?
Yep. It's still e-learning, right? It's still electronic or digital learning, but it's designed differently. It's no longer like looking at a screen and go forward, press the button, keep going forward, keep going forward. It's now shorter bites of information. It's probably slightly outdated too, but I use the term modular. Like I like training in modules that can be like these blocks built and moved around in a lot of different ways. So that if you and I both start at the company at the same time, but you are more experienced, then you might not need these blocks. But maybe I'm coming from a different industry or a different job role, and I need those blocks. But we both need these blocks here. And like that element of e-learning is we can do that very easily. Now, it's hard to replicate that in a instructor-led environment with multiple people. Unfortunately, a lot of times we train to the middle when it comes to like an in-person or instructor-led training. But e-learning allows you to customize that and make it very much somebody's specific path of, okay, this is what I know you need based on this role or that region that you're in or the experience that you came in with or the product or system that you're going to work with, whatever the case is. We can create those blocks and put all that together. And it is still e-learning. It's just a very different format of e-learning. And it's, I think, changing the way we expect people to get through training. When I think about onboarding, which is one of the things I'm super passionate about because somebody's introduction to a company is so critical to whether they're going to stay, whether they enjoy it, whether they're going to be successful. Sort of like that speed to competency is back in the day, we would try to throw everything at new hires. These are all the possible things you might need to know in the next 2 years. And that's just not the way to do it, right? It's overwhelming and it's not relevant at the moment. So they're not using it, so they can't retain it. So onboarding can look so differently now where it's not sitting there in an 8-hour new hire training or sometimes multiple days of new hire training, but it's taking those blocks and saying, okay, here's this, and here's how you go find that. They'll remember that. They'll remember, oh, there's a SharePoint site or an intranet or a knowledge directory for me to go to. They'll remember that, and then they can go find it themselves so that they can learn, and that helps them sort of retain that information. It's changed this industry and what we do significantly, which I think is very exciting.
Here, there's that whole concept of everboarding.
Yes, absolutely. I love that term. Yes, everboarding. Yes.
Yeah, and I think really what everboarding is just that continuous training throughout the lifetime of your employee, right?
Absolutely. Being there in the moment that they need it, right? So that it's available when they need it, and there's different methods to it. So, some companies do a really good job of using like their internal mechanisms, whether it's Teams or Slack or whatever, finding that mechanism that people could either go and ask questions or they can find those tools in the moment, especially being from a global company. I might not actually be available, but I want them to be able to find the answer or be able to contact somebody else that might be working those hours. I can get that answer. And you're right, the everboarding is the way a company needs to look at their employee experience to make sure that they are consistently getting what they need as roles and changes happen in the company. But the other thing that I would say, and I think L&D is moving much more towards this, and the more I am seeing articles and podcasts and videos about this makes me excited, we have to be tied into the actual business. We cannot be order takers. We cannot be a tactical only organization. We have to be tied into the business. And to me, that is having ongoing conversations with business leaders and stakeholders to understand what are we moving towards. So in my own organization, there's things that I know that are coming down the line 6 months or a year from now because I've had those conversations. So I'm doing what I need to do now to help prepare our teams for that. And that's exciting to me. And it means that I have become a trusted advisor in the organization so that they know, hey, we need to loop Jennifer in on this. There's nothing I love more than that, is feeling like, okay, I've shown my value. They understand how I can help them be successful, and they know they need me to do that in that way. And so when you think about that technology and how do you figure out that skills gap, it's really understanding what are those skills and how do you evaluate it, but then also being tied into that. So you're kind of ahead of the game. And I would add a little note to that. Like, that's being proactive, right? But nature of this business, we have to be reactive as well. Things happen that we can't prepare for. And that kind of comes into the VUCA thing. So we have to be able to think, okay, can we respond quickly when something changes? And I think that goes back to that element of the old school e-learning design. We can't spend 4 months creating an e-learning in response to something that's changed. We have to have those quick responses. And I think she might actually be here, but there is a webinar that I attended a little while ago. She's sort of like this she's really learned how to maximize the idea of like TikTok training or TikTok learning, short bursts of information that is very informal. It could be like this, right? Just a couple people in a room together having a conversation about what's happening next, maybe throwing up something on a screen and sharing your screen recording, but not over producing something, but being able to get it out there so people can look at it, that they can start to be prepared, so that we can do the quicker response time when needed. Because if we don't do that, they're going to stop asking. They're going to stop keeping us in the loop when things do change, because they're like, oh, last time it took them 2 months to get back to us and get that material to us, and it was irrelevant by the time we got it. Whereas if we can respond quickly within a couple of days, that's amazing.
I think you kind of sort of started to answer what my next question was going to be, in that you're talking about, making sure that you're part of the business, that the business understands L&D's value, and also being able to respond so quickly as things continue to speed up and speed up and speed up. What do you see any other trends kind of coming around, especially as you start talking to people at this conference? I mean, are there things that you're noticing, things that people are bringing up that you kind of say, yeah, I think that really is where we're going?
So I would be remiss if I didn't say AI, right? So whether you call it co-pilot, AI, there's so much potential for how it's going to impact L&D, but organizations as a whole. But some of my favorite LinkedIn posts probably over the past month or maybe 6 months has been around different prompts that L&D can use. And it can be something as basic as, here's my PowerPoint, help me write the training objectives. Okay, great. Let me just remind you, training objectives learners don't care. That is not for the learners, that's for us. It's great and it's helpful and we need it in order to design something, but they should be the business outcomes is what we should care about. So, but having prompts to do things like understanding that, having prompts that can create basic quizzes or knowledge checks, that's amazing. Using AI to do that so that we don't have to spend the time doing that. Yes, we want to obviously cross-reference and check and make sure it's accurate, but the AI component I think is going to be huge. And I haven't heard too many people say this yet, so I'm proactively going to kind of go in and say, I don't think it's going to eliminate L&D roles, and AI is not going to do that. What it's going to do is allow us to change focus and spend less time on some of the tactical stuff, the design nitty-gritty stuff, and allow us to do more of the strategy, the behind the scenes, not just doing the intake form for a training, but spending time really understanding the business and how it's going to impact it. Maybe implementing new technologies that can do something kind of cool that we haven't had a chance to do. So AI to me is the number one thing that I think is going to change our industry over the next couple years. So I talked about like prompts for, objectives and the quizzes, but it's also other things like, what is somebody in this role, what might they need 2 years from now? So you can start to ask those questions and go, oh, I didn't think about adding that in there. Or even things like, and I try not to use the term soft skills. I haven't settled on any other term yet, but I know there's people skills, there's, the universal skills. I've actually did an article like trying to figure this out myself, and I don't have an answer yet. But the non-technical skills, the transferable skills, um, asking the question in an AI prompt. Okay, what is somebody in this role? What soft skills do they need most to be successful? Or what is a customer looking for from that person? Looking at engagement surveys and getting that employee engagement content, AI is going to help continue making those things a lot easier for us in the L&D field. Um, so hands down, I'm sure there's other things that could come to my mind, but AI, 99% of what I think is going to be impacting the future for us right now probably rolls around somewhere within AI. And then I feel like it's a nonstop thing for us in L&D, but ROI, the business outcome, not caring about completion rates. Nobody cares. That's an L&D thing. But understanding, what did this training change or prepare or improve in the business, that's going to be where we're going to continue to have all that extra value, and where our sort of like next key things are that we need to be aware of.
Outstanding. Well, I don't want to keep you from more mixing and mingling out there on the floor. Thank you so much for your time today, Jennifer.
This
Your
was great.
perspectives have been really insightful, and I could probably talk to you for the next hour and a half. So thank you again for joining us for this episode, and see you everyone next time on the NovoEDTalks podcast.